Guys, I wanted to go over propagating in sphagnum moss today. So we are going to use just a couple cuttings of some pothos. I've got a neon and just a regular old jade. Really pretty together also, which is nice. So you just want to take a cutting just like you would anything, just as if you were water propagating. I'm going to cut right below the node, which is that little brown guy there. This green, I didn't realize it when I cut it, but that will be either a leaf or a stem, probably a leaf, judging by how it's growing there. I usually don't go for anything that's got leaves that are growing, but this one is just about unfurled, so I think it's fine. It's when they're in that very beginning stage. I like to avoid cutting them because I want the energy to go towards the roots and not towards making that leaf. But like I said, this is almost unfurled, so it's okay. Plus it's got a really nice node here, so that should start rooting very quickly. Container I'm going to use is this salsa container. You can use a Ziploc bag. Ziplocs work really well because you can close them up and it makes a little humidity dome, if you will, so the moss stays nice and moist. If you do keep it open air, constantly check the moistness of that moss. Hey, you stop that. So I've got my moss right here. I did already go ahead and wet it a little bit earlier. You just want to squeeze and make sure any excess water is squeezed out. So you want to keep it moist. You want it to retain its shape, but you don't want it soaking wet. Otherwise, you're just going to rot your little cuttings, which is what we want to avoid. So I just put it in there, kind of make like a little nest, if you will. Take your cutting, going to just put that in the moss. I'm having a hard time talking and doing stuff at the same time today. And then I just go ahead and cover that up. I will be putting this one downstairs in the plant room, and it will go into a little container with a domed lid, so it will stay nice and humid. It will stay really nice and warm. If you are doing this in the winter, especially because it's so cold, usually our houses, even with the heat on, don't stay that nice warm ambient temperature like they do in the summer. I put a nice inexpensive heating mat underneath all my seedlings and all of my little propagations. They root fairly quickly. So this should root, probably start seeing roots in about a week or so. It usually doesn't take too long, especially in the growing season. And then I'll show you. Now I know this is not a pothos, but I don't have any pothos in moss right now that I can show you, but I do have this Hoya that I started maybe 10 days ago. Hoyas root so fast in the moss, it's kind of crazy. So when you are checking the roots, also be very careful when you're pulling the moss. If you yank it too hard, sometimes you can damage the roots that your plant just spent all that time and energy growing. So I'm not going to pull this one anymore because I feel like I'm going to break it, and I would hate to do that while I'm recording myself. So this I'll show you in just a few days. We've got a nice root there. I've got a nice root here in the middle, and I do have a really nice little system forming right in here. I just don't want to pull that down. Same with this guy. We've got nice little roots on both sides. So before too long, I can go ahead and put this in the soil, put it in the sunlight, and she will keep growing. And on the second part, bonus, I'm going to show you how to propagate a peperomia. So it's a peperomia propagation in cocoa. So this is just plain cocoa coir. It is already moistened. It's not wet. It's a little damp. You know what? Let's just go ahead, spritz that. I like to get not soaking wet again. I don't want to pour any water over it, but I want it to be moist enough that when I do spritz it later, cocoa's not flying everywhere, because that will happen. So put that little guy to the side. I'm going to take my mama plant. This is my frost. She's growing like absolute crazy. The nice thing about these two is if you don't want to propagate in soil, cut a stem anywhere, stick that baby in some water, and they root insanely fast. So I'm going to do, just cut right there. So I now have my little piece. I'm not going to be propagating this one in the water though. We are going to be putting it in soil. I'm going to cut like right here. There we go. So we're gonna have just a teeny tiny little piece at the very end. You could either just stick this straight into the soil, or we can get 2 for 1. We're going to cut it in half. And now we have what will be 2 plants. So you could put rooting hormone on this also, and if you don't have any, that's totally fine. It will grow all the same. I just stick that in the soil like so. And then this one, same thing. And this is why it works a little bit easier if your soil is a little bit moist, because it'll stay in there nicely. And then you could just fill that up and you'll have several in there. And then I'll show you, I started this one about 1 month ago. Always date everything too, helps you keep an eye on when you've started these things. But you can see we have our mama leaf here, and then all the little babies are starting right around it. And then these guys I started, what is it now? Okay, 3 months ago now, just about 3 months ago. And you could see, same thing, you got your mama leaves are the big ones here. Leave those on basically forever. They'll eventually rot away. But now I've got a bunch of growth. Same with this one. This one is the little bottom leaves, and this one was the top of the leaf. The tops are doing much better than the bottoms, turns out. But you can see all these little baby plants, so that's really fun to watch those grow. And then I'll show you, I wish I had this one dated, but I got a cutting as a swap. Did a cutting and a swap. Take that guy out, we'll propagate it. And it was just one big leaf with a couple little babies, far less than a year ago. No idea when, but she is a full-grown, big old plant, flowered. It does help to cut the flowers off too. You want the energy going to the leaves, not the flowers. Plus the flowers don't really flower, they just have these little spikies, so nothing really to look at anyway. But you can see we've already got little offshoots all over. So they do grow fairly quickly once they start growing. See, it does take a few months to go from just soil, just to the starting of the growth, to the plant, to a plant. But it's fun to watch. It's fun to watch them grow. Also, when you have this little guy, make sure you're constantly keeping the soil moist. I don't put a bunch of water in there, but I do just give it a little spritz here and there. It is okay for the water to get on the leaves too. It will not hurt it. It will not rot. They will not turn colors. Mushrooms hopefully shouldn't pop out of anywhere. Just keep a little airflow going. Anyway, date, put away, happy planting.